Hello friends, welcome back. So today I have a question for you guys. Have you guys heard of the desert vampire? Because I haven't until now. So this person is so messed up. So what he did was, not only did he kill 54 children, but he did admit if he wasn't caught, he would have killed 100 more. So today's case, we're going to talk about Mohamed Bijeh, which is known as the desert vampire of Iran. Mohamed Bijeh was born on the 7th of February 1974. Bijeh was born in a very crowded family. He had 6 brothers and 6 half-brothers. So the house was crowded and things was not going well for them. The family was very poor, and the only way to earn money in Iran was to earn it through manual labor, which they had no choice in doing. When Bijeh was only 4 years old, his mother died of cancer, and his father, which was a merchant at the time, married immediately afterwards. Bijeh said later on that he couldn't remember his mom because she died at such a young age, and he was really young at the time as well. He was only 4 years old, but all he remembers is that his dad was a very barbaric, intimidating man that chained his hands and feet throughout childhood and practically abused him. That's all he really remembers. Bijeh really faced a lot of abuse growing up, and because of that, he hardly had any affection. His father forced him to abandon school and start working. So Bijeh found a job as a furnace and a brick worker. And at the workplace, he faced even more abuse, mostly SA, at just 11 years old. Around that time, he was R-worded by multiple employees at the workplace, and nobody did anything to stop it. But in my personal opinion, I believe that he didn't really ask for help. He just put up with it because he was just 11 years old. He was a defenseless young boy. This has significantly impacted Bijeh over the years, and because of what has happened to him, all of the abuse and the SA, he became more withdrawn and decided to stay alone most of the time. He was known to be an outcast in the local neighborhood. People found him weird. This is because of the abuse he faced, like I've mentioned. Because of that, it changed his behavior and he chose to be alone. It really seemed like he didn't trust people anymore, and I don't blame him at this point because he wasn't raised well. He was born into this crowded family. He's getting abused for no reason at all. There's no record that all of his other brothers, there's no record whether or not they have been abused, but I'm assuming they have. But this has impacted Bijeh. I mean, that's why we're here today, because he has done terrible things later on in his life. And I'm not excusing that, because there are people out there that have faced abuse and SA and all of that awful stuff, but they didn't result in taking someone's life or doing it as a hobby, like hunting human beings, One of the things Bijeh enjoyed doing was hunting animals in the Tehranian desert. He was just, out there on his own and just hunting animals. This is my personal opinion, but I think he was hunting animals just to deal with all of the SA that was happening at work, because he was being SA'd almost every shift. Like every time he would work at that furnace, it's quite of a secluded area. He's just surrounded by a lot of men. There was no record of any woman working there, and there was no rules basically. Anyone would do anything to anyone, and not much was done about it, which is it's very upsetting, because he was only a child, and the only way he could have defended himself was to go out there and take his frustrations out on animals, which isn't a good thing, but yeah, that's what he was doing. He was hunting animals in the desert. So that's all the information I could find regarding Bijeh's childhood and what he was doing. However, let's skip forward to 2004. Bijeh is now 22 years old, and what he starts doing is just So Bijeh hasn't recovered from his childhood, and he decided to befriend children in the local area. The reason why he befriended children wasn't that he actually cared about them, but he had a more sinister idea in mind. It was reported that Bijeh tricked children to join him to go to the desert together so they could hunt animals. Once the children were there with him in the desert, he would poison them or knock them out. And when that happens, he then proceeds to SA each child that he brought to the desert and then bury them in shallow graves. And then if that wasn't enough, he would also go back and set the body alight to make sure that he conceals any evidence. I mean, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you taking your frustrations out on children? Like, he didn't even aim for anyone else. Like, his target was just kids. They were all boys as well. Like, I don't get it. All of this happened between March and September of 2004. So he was hunting children for 6 months. Hunting them, killing them, assaying them, and then killing them for the second time by burning their bodies. Like, each and every child, he did the exact same thing. And I don't really have the time to name each individual victim because out of respect and kindness, I don't want to do that. I just feel like there's just so many victims and it is just deeply upsetting. So most of his victims were migrants from Afghanistan, and the parents were very worried to report their child missing because they could be facing deportation or a fine that they can't afford. Bijeh targeted families that are very vulnerable, that were escaping civil wars at the time and famine, and he was just out there hunting very impressionable children, innocent children. And his motives I will explain later on as we discuss this case. This guy is so sick, I have no words. So after Bijeh has murdered his 54th victim, he was finally caught and arrested. I couldn't find reports on how he was captured or if someone tipped the police off, I'm not sure. But he was caught and he did confess to the crimes. Not only did he confess, but like I said earlier, he said if I wasn't caught on time, according to Bijeh, he would kill 100 more children. Like, I have no words. Like, why are you murdering young boys in your local area? And you're a serial killer. Like, you did it one after the other. This is something I will never understand. On 27th of November 2004, Bijeh was sentenced to be executed by hanging. And he was also going to get 100 lashes on his back. What he said about his sentence, I just can't get it out of my head. He said that he doesn't deserve to die. He thinks his execution is completely unfair. He simply said, I don't deserve to die like this. Bijeh wasn't the only person arrested. Around 16 officers that were working this case have been dismissed also because they haven't been professional. They haven't been, collecting evidence, putting in a lot of time and effort trying to find all of these missing children. And it was so obvious that a serial killer was on the loose. But 16 officers all were found guilty of, negligence, unprofessional behavior, and so on. So the officers that I've just mentioned were dismissed by incompetence. They were working the case for a year and they were very sloppy with the paperwork and so on. It's just, they honestly didn't care. So when the news broke out that Bijeh was behind all of the child killings in Iran, it became public outrage. Over 5,000 people showed up at the town center to cheer on the fact that Bijeh is going to be executed, and they were very happy that the perpetrator was found and convicted and shortly going to get executed. So there was a public hanging and it was wild. It was a circus. It was a complete frenzy. There were people rioting on the streets. There were people chanting, "Death to Bijeh!" And the victims' families finally found peace, but at the same time, it's still very upsetting. So let's talk about how he was executed. And trigger warning, I am going to add images, but I'm going to blur it out just to warn you. So the victims' families were there to watch the live execution of Mohamed Bijeh. As they looked on, they see police officials giving Bijeh 100 lashes on his bare back. And those images are very easy to find online, so I do warn you, it's not easy to look at. His back was raw and bloodied, and it was intense. He didn't really speak as he was being slashed. He just accepted his fate, basically. And he was just tied to an iron post, handcuffed, his top was removed, and they started lashing him. And I was wondering if one police officer is going to do all of the 100 lashes, but there were a bunch of police officers there and they all took turns. And if you look at the images, you can see that he's in a lot of pain. And yeah, he's facing capital punishment basically for his crimes. After the 100 lashes on his bare back, Bijeh was attached to a crane and they just lifted him midair about 10 meters off the ground before hanging him from a rope attached to a crane. So one of the victim's mothers decided to put a blue ribbon around his neck, and one of the other families decided to run through security and stab Bijeh in his back. So it was a 17-year-old boy. His brother was murdered by Bijeh, and he was obviously outraged, and he managed to, right before Bijeh was lifted up into the sky. I know, this case is so heavy. It's just, I can't believe this has happened. There's so many serial killers out there that aim for young boys. Like, I could never fathom, like, why do this? Like, I understand you're a SA survivor and so on, and it's a scar that could never be healed. But why take your anger out on innocent kids? Like, that's my question. So spectators chanted, "Death to Bijeh," we hate that guy. They were just chanting things and they were basically degrading him. So he was just hoisted right above everybody. He could see the whole town center from his view. He was basically strangled to death, hanged to death, and it took around 20 minutes of him being up in the air. And one of the victims' families told the police officials, "Would you mind swinging Bijeh side to side while he's up in the air?" Which they promptly did, and that caused his shoes to fall off. But he was up there for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, he was slowly put down to the ground, where a doctor pronounced him dead. He took one good look at him and was like, "Yep, he's dead." One of the victim's dad said, "This is the happiest day in my life," and I quote. And he also said that "my suffering will come to an end now that I know that Bijeh was responsible and has been lawfully killed." He also mentioned, the same dad, he also mentioned that, his son and two of his friends were playing outside of the house where Bijeh appeared out of nowhere and tricked them to join him to the desert to hunt for animals. They just went with him, and that's where he committed that awful crime, the unspeakable crime. It's so frustrating. I hate it when kids get killed, when they get murdered. It's just so upsetting. The dad sadly did say that his son's body was never recovered. All he got was some bones. That's all he has left of his son, his 12-year-old son. "All I got was mere bones." And I quote, that's what he said. In Iran, public executions are very rare, and they will only happen if there's heinous crimes such as murder, SA. Only for heinous crimes will there be public executions. The public found out what Bijeh has done. They just couldn't imagine having a serial killer nearby that was abducting and murdering their children. So why did Bijeh do this? Well, he did explain his motives, which doesn't make sense in my opinion because there's no excuse. But the reason why Bijeh has murdered innocent children was to get back at the town of Tehran. He wants to get back to the town that turned their backs on him, where he wasn't, safe and treated well. Him being an outcast was everyone else's fault, so he decided to take revenge. That is the only reason he has done this. He feels that he was justified, like what he did was justified. I have no words whatsoever. Please stay safe, stay hydrated. I will see you guys next Saturday. Till then, I'll see you guys later. Bye.